welcome to part 2. I am Michelle with Real Talk Savannah, and we are here for part 2 with Dana, the lender. So last week we kind of touched on like where to begin, especially with those who are self-employed or are bartenders, and what to do with that cash and how to report that cash. But we're going to go into more detail with different steps, and she kind of goes into all of the steps on what to do whenever you're getting a loan, whether it's for a house, a business, and how really cool it is to work with a local lender. So now welcome back, Dana, for part 2.
Doing face-to-face, and that I think helps people bond, trust, learn, it's a better way to form those relationships, especially long-term.
Right. And then in the future, after you go through a first-time home buyer, I've seen as a realtor, someone start with one home. I helped a friend purchase, her and her husband purchase their very first home. And then they wanted to do, a couple of years later, they worked with the same lender. And a couple of years later, they bought their first investment property. And now I think 7 years later, they have at least 10 investment properties. So that's really cool. It can be, and they both have other jobs.
Right.
One owns a business. The other one has a job. They do other things. The experience was so good, and they worked with a lender to then have investment properties. So they have rental properties now too.
Right.
So, it's just, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
but they work with the same lender every time. They have their person that they call, and they've worked with, as they've grown now that they're investors, they're on a different level with the bank, and now they have all these assets, and I don't know, I'm really proud of them. Right. But it was just really cool to see them scared as heck when they did that first, when we were looking at properties, they were scared of their first purchase, and now look at them 10 properties later.
Yeah.
But they did work with a person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, and they worked together.
Yes, I have
what's best for them.
Client relationships that are like that, where I have financed, every home that they've ever purchased.
I think sometimes people put it in the same categories. Like when you go to buy a car, it's like it's nothing like that.
They do. They
really do put it. It's nothing like that.
Right. It's, it really, I mean, when you work with someone that like, and trust, it just makes the whole thing easier for everybody.
Yeah. And it's a 20, 30 year it
can be, I know
there are a lot of programs, but it's not, it's not like a car.
Right. I have clients that came to me in their 20s, and I have done loans for them all the way up and through their 50s. And, now they're established. I mean, they have children that are grown, almost grown. And it's just been great to watch, their progress through life as well. It's a lot of fun.
And it's nice to hear a lender say that. that you enjoy that side of it and
Absolutely.
Watching the success.
Absolutely.
I enjoy it so much as a realtor too. Let's touch on the debt to income ratio and how that's looked at by the lender.
Right.
So and what that means for the client coming in.
Right. So all lending programs have a guidance on what the debt to income ratio should be. And there's automated underwriting that looks at their whole scenario. It looks at their credit score, their down payment, their job stability. It looks at everything. And then it's going to look at that debt to income ratio. And if it sees risk factors in that file, then it's going to keep that debt to income ratio. It's going to want to keep that closer to the guideline. Whereas if somebody has, stellar credit, extra money, good job stability and all of that, it's going to give them a little more leeway. But it is there is a hard stop for all programs. So if we are over the debt to income ratio on every program that we feel like this person is eligible for, then we have to figure out ways to get it down.
And that would be like paying off credit card debt.
Off debt.
Wherever that debt is.
Correct. Yes. Trying to pay off debt, consolidating. There's a variety of ways that they can do that to try to get that number down to where it will work.
Okay.
And co-signers, that's, another thing where, if somebody doesn't qualify to do it by themselves, then sometimes we can get a family member or somebody that will co-sign.
Yes, I had a young first-time buyer who's the parents helped because of the length of it was a couple of things. Their credit was fine, but they were fresh out of college. They hadn't worked long. They were artists. Like it was the type of job that they had. And so the dad came in and helped. And that's really sweet. If you have a family member or you have somebody that'll do that in your life, that's awesome.
It's fairly common. It's fairly common that we see
but we had put it under contract
members.
just under them, and then that issue came up during the lending process. They were pre-approved, but I guess like after they got a little deeper in the process, Dad came in to help.
Right.
I don't even remember what it was. I don't know if it was the rates but something came in and they stopped, and so then Dad came in and we were able to finish the home purchase and close the house.
So those are the kinds of things that happen. I mean, I try my best, to cover every possible scenario, and do the most due diligence I can do before they get to a point of contract. But sometimes things happen and people are not always communicative with us like they should be. We're an afterthought sometimes. Like, oh, I forgot to tell my lender that,
I had a situation once where
I quit my job.
Surprise. I had a situation once where they made another large purchase, even though they were told not to. So you're not supposed to make purchases.
That's correct.
And so then they, just messed all the paperwork up and messed the whole loan up. It ended up being fine, but they were not supposed to make the purchase.
It throws a wrench into the whole process for sure, and it can kill the deal. And so we have tried to tell people, not to do that. Wait until after you are closed before you even inquire about getting credit for something else, furniture or whatever that may be.
Or a vehicle, or it was a large. It was a really nice vehicle purchase, and it put a hard stop on it. But
sure, and in their mind, they're like, we needed a car. That maybe the car was wrecked or something, and they had to go get a car. But it's like you have to talk to your lender first.
It stalled the closing because.
Sure.
The lender
there's
had to
more
factor all that
documentation
in.
they have to go through. Yes. There's a lot of paperwork.
Well, good. I think we covered.
So I was going to say, was there something else she wanted to wrap up?
She wants me to say something because this is really the first episode. I'm going to do a solo episode about like what I want the podcast to be about. I want the podcast not to just be about real estate. I want it to be about Savannah and the market in Savannah and things that are going on. We have a lady who worked in permitting for 25 years. One thing that's really frustrating because we have the MPC, the Historical Society, and then there's like 3 different. So she's willing. She's retired. She's going to come on and talk about it.
Oh, that's great.
And so I think that's going to be super helpful for business owners.
Very interesting. Yeah, for sure.
I get a little frustrated whenever I help someone find a spot to lease for their business. I also own a business, so I resonate with it. I get it. And they're stalled by permits. And so they're paying the lease, they're paying the rent, they're having to pay, and they can't open the doors because the permit's stalled. So I'm never going to be mean to the city, but I do want to make aware. I'm going to have some people that have had different situations and let them know, we have to keep this factual. We're not going to bash the city. I also would like to have city officials on here, and I don't want anyone to feel like we're coming after them, but it's more informative.
Sure.
Like someone else's process might help someone new. And then another podcast idea I had was the dating market, the demographic, how much are men making? How much are in Savannah? I think if you're moving here, you're going to buy a house here, you're single, you're whatever. There's a lot of things that so I just want to be smart about the consider. Market. Sure. Yeah. So I would just want to just make the whole podcast, about just Savannah as a whole. That's why we named it Real Talk Savannah.
Okay.
Just because it was real for realtor, but I don't want it to solely.
Oh, cute.
Solely be. We bought the domain. I could not believe it wasn't taken.
That's great. I love that.
So it's going to be about everything. I think it's good to get a little silly with it, with dating, but also it is. I helped a doctor find a rental. She's going to end up purchasing a house. I mentioned. I already did. I said I already did. So but she's going to rent for at least 6 months and we found her a cool place
Get
on
a feel
Jones Street.
for, right.
But she's also single. And so she's like, and we talked about it. She's like, well, she's what gave me the idea for that. She's like, the men don't really make it. She did like a demographic research of men in this area. And
wow.
And she's
good
like,
for her.
she's like, it's not really good for dating, but she found a really good job. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's challenging. Wrapping it up, and what's your recommendation as far as, if somebody's considering getting a loan of some sort? Obviously, if it's in the real estate world, I highly recommend that they, do a little homework and talk to a legit, local lender in their market, not an online lender. Go to somebody that you can get face-to-face with if needed. And, learn a little bit about what you need to do to prepare. A trusted local lender would be my greatest takeaway, is
absolutely
start having those conversations sooner rather than later, because if there are things you have to work on, then you've got the time. You're not scrambling at the last minute.
Right. I've in the beginning of my real estate career, I did a lot of condos. And you need a specific lender for condos because condos are difficult. And back then I found one that was getting them pushed through because condos are more difficult. So I just kept sitting and I'm like, why am I getting all these condo buyers? But for a while, I know that condos are difficult. So it is just to piggyback on that. It is really important to find no one would have been able to do it they don't understand the condos here, the non-warrantable stuff.
Well,
so only a local lender would understand that because it's a quirky thing in Savannah. It's not like,
oh no, it's quirky everywhere.
Is it the
it's the
condo?
same?
I feel like it's the warrantable, the non-warrantable thing. It was. I just thought that was like in
there's
Savannah.
Probably way more non-warrantable condos
in New York.
in the entire country than there are warrantable.
Yeah.
It's just
but
a
it
very
does take a lender with some experience in that. Because I had a buyer and she went through her bank, and they would not approve it. So she had to go through a local,
another outlet, right? Because there are, some do non-warrantable condos and some do not.
Yeah.
Right. So you need to know who does and who doesn't. Because that's pretty much, I mean, if they're getting any kind of a loan that's what we call agency or Fannie Freddie backed, they have very specific guidelines about what they require. And, condo associations are all over the place with how they manage or don't manage. And that's why they have those extra things in place for that. But it does make it complicated sometimes.
So find yourself a local lender.
Yes, if developers are considering building a condominium project,
they should
talk to lenders before they even go down that path and figure out, like, what do I need to put in place that's going to make it as easy as possible to get this financed?
Yeah, and I'd like to have you back on and solely talk about investment and investing, because Savannah it's growing, but there's not a lot of inventory and there's not a lot of new construction going on. But I would like to talk about what that looks like, because I have worked with so many investors and it is fun, but there's just, sometimes I think that, but you have to get creative here with you just have to get creative because there's not a lot of inventory. There's just not. Right.
Yeah. In this day and time, it's definitely a different outlook for the time being anyway.
So I'd like to have you on again in the future and we can just talk about that. So
yeah, I would love to.
I love that. Okay, cool. So that episode was great, super informative. We learned that credit score matters. We learned debt to income ratio. We learned that if you have assets, that matters and counts with a mortgage or a home loan. But I think the biggest thing that I learned is that you just need to walk in the door, set up the appointment with the lender, and come up with a plan. You may be missing two of the main things that you need to get a home loan, but they have resources to help you plan to get there. And I love that. I love that it's not like a car loan. A car loan, you go in, you fill out an application. A credit card loan, you go in, you fill out an application, and you get told yay or nay. what I love about working with the lender is it's not no, it's not yet. So I encourage each and every one of you to speak with the lender. You could have a not so great credit score, and they have resources to help you get your credit score there. You could have not enough money down, and they have resources to help you come up with the down payment down or a plan to get there. You could be new to your job and you don't have the job stability just yet to get there, but they are there not to tell you no. They're there to tell you not yet and come up with a plan to get there. So getting a home loan is so much easier than we think, and it's not a yes or no. There is a path to get from no to yes, and working with a local lender is how you get there. And that's what I loved about this episode. I love promise. I love a promise for people. I love a promise for the American dream. I'm not fully sold on the full American dream, but I do think that if homeownership and investment property and owning something that is yours is a dream or a hope of yours, that it's so easy just to walk into a local lender and come up with a plan to get there. Whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year, at least you're taking the steps. Just like if you signed up for a diet plan, a workout plan, whatever it is, you got to start somewhere. And the way to start is with a local lender. Now, on our next episode, I love this episode too. Plans for the city. We met with one of the aldermen, and he is telling us about the 40-mile path that's going to be throughout the entire city. Why does that matter to you? Well, that matters because where this plan is happening, it's going to be a bike and a walking path 40 miles from Armstrong to downtown. That's going to connect the city in so many ways. And it's going to make the city and properties more valuable along that path. So if you're thinking about purchasing a property in Savannah, wouldn't it be nice to know where that path is so you could purchase a property near that path because you know your property value is going to go up? That's a 5 to 10 year plan with the city. It is in place. It is approved. It is being built. It is happening. It's very similar kind of to the belt line that happened in Atlanta, which brought property values up on the east and west side of Atlanta. It's going to happen here. We have a housing shortage. We have a shortage in the housing market. We learn about that. We learn about how large the shortage is and how big that shortage is happening, so that you can understand where to invest and purchase in Savannah, where something may seem a little sketch or just not there yet. If you know the plans of the city, you will know, okay, I just need to be patient. I need to work with my local lender. There are opportunity zones. There are ways that you can invest. And if you don't know until you know. So that's the point of this podcast. I love Real Talk Savannah. I love our first episodes. I love where they're going. So the next episode is really informative. If you're thinking about buying in Savannah, you're currently renting, you definitely want to listen to this episode. So if you want to contact Dana, please hit me up through the show notes and I will give you her direct contact to get your real estate journey started.